Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Someone calling you?
No, not for me.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's Isaiah Diesel at RG Podcast. The podcast which is Christians and atheists coming together having civil and decent conversations. So I am very, very, very happy today because Sid is back after a year hiatus. And how are you doing today, Sid?
Good, good. Yeah, it's a nice Sunday morning here.
And Canada and
Yes,
the
in
Commonwealth.
British Columbia. Yeah, part of
The
the Commonwealth.
Commonwealth.
On the West Coast, BC.
BC. So I'm just curious, is the Queen still on your guys' money there?
Oh yeah, no, it takes a while to get that all switched. So
I'm just curious if you guys ever have like an American penny like you just you're just out one day and you just see an American penny, they give
oh
you the
yeah,
change.
we have lots of not bills per se, but we have lots of U.S. coins that get into circulation because our quarters are the
Right,
same size, pennies are the same size. So
right,
yeah,
right. We have Canadians every now and again, though you never see like a Canadian dime or Canadian quarter, but you definitely do see Canadian pennies come down here. So yeah, I've seen
okay,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So anyway, we are going to be discussing the death penalty today. And can you tell me real quick, does the UK, well, not the UK, does Canada have the death penalty?
No, I believe it was 1976. The Supreme Court here ruled that it unconstitutional. And since
76.
yeah, and since in
You guys
Canada,
celebrating America's birthday?
well, we
No, I'm just
celebrate our
kidding.
own birthday every day or
I'm
every year.
joking.
But yeah, no, yeah, it was ruled unconstitutional in Canada. The like in the states, different states have different laws
Mhm.
regarding the death penalty. In Canada, the court system runs differently. Those that murder isn't a state crime. There is no provincial crime for murder. It's a federal law. All those laws that need to do with serious crimes are all federal. So as soon as the Supreme Court said, yeah, the death penalty is unconstitutional, then it applied federally. So it was across the board. It was there was no death penalty, and it has been that way since it was never challenged again or anything. So
Well, so let me ask you real quick, how many different states are, or do you guys have like a federalist system similar to ours, or how many do you have
not
different
similar,
states?
but yeah, we have 10 provinces and 3 territories. So the provinces are they're set up like a in the U.S. it would be like a state. So
I know
uh,
Quebec. I
yeah,
do know
Quebec
Quebec.
has and instead of governors we have premiers. We have
Hmm.
instead of a state legislature we have a provincial legislature. So you elect provincial, we call them MLAs, member of the Legislative Assembly. So you
Hmm.
elect them for the province, different ridings. They go in, the party that gets the most votes or has the most seats usually forms a government. So they pick amongst themselves. Their leader
Hmm.
will become the premier, and then he picks a cabinet of sitting members, and
Hmm.
they're like it's like the governor picks a cabinet to run different parts of the state. The
Hmm.
premier picks
Hmm.
members of the legislative assembly to run different departments, be minister of transport or minister of health or something. So yeah, in Canada we have 10 provinces, and then the 3 territories have
So
elected bodies, but they're not the same legal standing because they got less people and they're less formalized. So go ahead.
so yeah, so we're going to be discussing the death penalty today. But when we start to discuss issues like this, it's important to note that there's a political element of it, but then there's also just the morality
Yeah,
that we also want to discuss because laws can change, as you were talking about. And
yep,
so, yeah, we do want to talk about both sides. And I want to present my side kind of as a Christian. And then if you could present your side as an atheist, and then we can, hopefully challenge each other and maybe iron out some things. So, are you ready
okay,
for that?
sure.
All right. So the first question I think I had for you was, what is your position on the death penalty and why?
I'm opposed to the death penalty, and there's a couple different reasons why, but the primary reason why is I don't think the state. I mean, the state can compel us in a lot of things. Like I have to pay taxes. Mm-hmm. there's some involuntary things I have to do as a citizen of a country. Not that I wouldn't help out people if there was no tax system, but that's an example. Like they can use force to make me pay taxes, right? So there's several things the state can force you to. They can force you to join the military if they need to. But all of those things that the state can force you to do are supposed to be for the good of the society. So they force you to pay taxes because it's supposed to be good for the society. They force you to join the military because the society might need you to, save it from some external threat. That's fine. So, I mean, there's several things they can do. I just don't really want to grant the state the right to start taking people's lives. I just don't think that. I think that's an overreach that they just don't need to do. So my objection on it is more, I have some moral objections to it, but more along the line as a functional objection is I don't want to grant the state that much power. I think the state has enough power as it is with everything else in our lives. I just don't think they should have the right to life and death.
Well,
now there's so a couple beyond that. Beyond that, there's other reasons, but that's if you want a primary reason, that's the primary reason.
Okay, yeah. So that has to do specifically with legality. So I want to also discuss the morality of it, but also the practicality of it as well. So I do want to say this. Any chance, because I think it passed by you, but any chance you saw the the weather balloon, because you're talking about the state and what the state can do, but the weather balloon that I'm trying to, we finally blew it down. So I wrote this on a tweet. I said, or on Facebook, it says, living overseas for over a decade and traveling to dozens of countries, I know that a lot of other countries do a lot of things better than the USA. But when it comes to blowing up stuff, no one gets it relatively up in the USA. So I said, anyone else wants to get an experience over just over to the US and we'll blow it up. All right. Kaz needs a minute, but he's here. He's another atheist here. So be two atheists, one Christian. All right. So let me ask you something then. Ethically, what exactly is your position one way or the other, Sid?
Ethically on the death penalty?
Yeah.
I think I think for a state to impose the death penalty, I think it degrades the ethics of a society. I think that's why most societies have gotten away from it, because it tends to pull you down as a society to that level of the criminal that committed the act in the first place, and it's leaning into more of a punishment / revenge rather than justice. And I guess my example is this: is very few places that have the death penalty. There's a few, but of the few countries left that do the death penalty, there's very few that do it publicly. If you think about it, I mean, there might be a few. Like I think, Saudi Arabia might do it publicly, but like for instance, in the U.S., they don't commit the death penalty out in a public square. Like in the old days in England and Europe, they guillotined people and they hung people out in the public all the time. So even places where they still do that, they do it in private. And I think part of that is, I think most people deep down don't really think it's an appropriate or moral thing to do. So they kind of hide it. You know what I mean?
All right. Well, let's get Mr. Kaz's. Thank you for joining us, Kaz. I'm sorry for the time switch up, but what is your position on the death penalty?
Well, to be concise, I'm against it. I am of the opinion that the fact that we have innocent people on death row means that it's unethical to execute anybody on death row.
So, so let's just assume that you want guilty. What exactly would be wrong with executing someone in your?
It was breaking up a second ago.
Let's
assume what?
So assume that you know somebody's guilty, like they've confessed it, they're on video. What exactly is the ethical problem? Like if you know for certain that they're guilty. Did you get that?
I think he's frozen.
Can you hear me? If you know for certain that somebody is guilty, what's the problem then?
Do you want me to answer that, or?
Yeah.
Well, I guess there's two things. I mean, how do you define certain? I mean, we've had cases where people confess to crimes and then later on been exonerated from them. So I don't know how. I understand. I'm not trying to nitpick your question. I'm not trying to pull it apart. But I mean, how certain can we ever be? Okay, let's say somebody does confess, and we know we did all the. Say we can be as certain as we can be, right? Okay. There's still an ethical issue with it, and it maybe touched on a bit of what Kaz was saying. Is that, is it? I would think it's better to have a known guilty murderer not executed, if that saves someone else that's in the same situation as that murderer but was innocent. Because how would you parse that? You'd say, well, okay, this guy confessed, we got evidence, we're 100% sure he's guilty, so we'll execute him. The other guy, we got the same evidence, maybe he didn't confess, but we're 100% sure as we can be that he's guilty, so we'll execute him. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's I think it goes back to okay, go ahead.
Hold on, it doesn't make sense because let's just assume that we know that somebody is guilty. All right, I'm getting to the philosophical reasons behind it. Okay. We can get into some of the other nitty-gritty stuff, but like philosophically, what is wrong with that?
Well, philosophically, it doesn't do anything. All it does is degrade us as a society, saying we're at the same level as a murderer. You went out in anger and did something, a bad act, so we're going to follow it up with our own out of anger act. Doesn't help the victim, doesn't help the families. It doesn't really do anything.
But it's since we got three. Well,
sorry, I missed some
you
of that.
Can't really say it's the same. It's like the same. Yeah, you can't really say it's lower level because let's just give an example. If you had a gun, which I know you guys don't have guns there in Canada, but let's just assume you had a gun. You borrowed one from an American, and then you shot Kaz, okay, and you killed him. That is murder with like malicious, right? It's malicious, It's malice aforethought. But if you pull out a gun and you're trying to shoot Kaz, and then I pull out a gun and shoot you, those are not the same. Those are not ethically. Those are not philosophically. Those are not legally the same thing, right? So if you are killing someone to prevent other people from dying, that's kind of like the whole idea of war, is that yes, you have to kill people, but there's a just reason to do it. So I think just to say you're just lowering yourself to a criminal, that's not really accurate. That's not really meaningful, in my opinion. Let's get Kaz in on this. What is philosophically wrong with it, Kaz?
Taking innocent life?
No, not innocent life. The death penalty. What's wrong with the death penalty?
I mean, I don't have a a strong argument for the death penalty of somebody that you're absolutely certain committed a crime. But the issue is that as a policy for a nation, we have to deal with probabilities and we have to deal with the actual statistics. And the fact is, we are executing innocent people. And that's my problem with it.
Right. But, especially these days with AI and, the way that we can track people and DNA and everything, like it's got really sophisticated. So if you made this case 100 years ago, I probably wouldn't have any counter to you. But the fact that we have surveillance that can catch people, like people try to evade it, like this guy who killed these people, these Ohio students. Any chance you follow that, Sid? What happened in America?
I saw that news. I saw a bit of that news thing, but I didn't really. We got enough of our own nonsense going on. Yeah. And it's a similar thing with Aaron Hernandez. He was an NFL player who killed some people, but man, they caught that guy he was trying to evade being detected, but they were able to catch that guy so many places, like at gas stations
and
people's
Hernandez
houses.
Suffering from TBI?
Yeah, he TBI,
traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
So you would support the death penalty for people who are committing crimes as a result of a pathology?
Well, no, it's called. I think it's called CT. It's called like chronic.
CTI.
Anyway, CT. It's CT. Anyway, the point is, okay. So specifically with Aaron Hernandez, there is something to be said about that. Specifically with that one, you're talking about CTE. Actually, Kaz, the only way you can actually tell if somebody has that, at least right now, is that you have to actually examine like their physical brain. So it's like not possible to do that while they're alive.
It's just like with Alzheimer's. Like Alzheimer's was a disease. I'm not sure if it's currently the case, but at some point in the very recent future, it was the case that you were not able to diagnose Alzheimer's conclusively without an autopsy.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you have a early onset Alzheimer's patient who commits a crime. Should they get the book thrown at them for that?
Well, obviously not. I mean, it's obviously not. If someone like kills someone, say at the age of 6 or something, which has happened, that's definitely happened on record. You definitely don't treat that person the same way as you treat an adult. So it's not. I wouldn't be up for executing a 6-year-old or someone with Down syndrome who's committed murder. So those aren't really, to kind of look at those extreme cases on the outliers to talk about just the general morality. Those are like outliers right there. It's not really good.
We use the outliers to distill the most concrete version of the ethic there, and then we go back to the general versions and we say, how does that apply here? So like with the case of somebody with a congenital issue or early onset Alzheimer's or whatever the case may be, if you then apply that ethic to somebody like Aaron Hernandez, how do you then say that person deserves the death penalty, but these people don't? So then we get more ethic there when you tell me the answer to that question.
Well, I think, the court system recognizes that certain people, that's kind of like, that's what insanity is. If you can plead insanity, they recognize that the person wasn't capable at the time. And it could be a temporary insanity. Something happened, or it could be something happened like his wife in bed with the woman, and they don't like. I don't think any judge or any prosecutor would try to get the death penalty for someone who killed someone in bed with his wife. Those are. There's a difference between like a manslaughter, second degree, and a first degree. So they're not all on the same level, right? You agree with that's it?
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously there's different degrees of crimes.
Mhm.
Somebody that if you're in a fit of passion or and that's why they have manslaughter or first degrees. I don't know how
Right.
different I don't know how different the U.S. legal system is from the Canadian,
It's probably different.
British, little bit, but roughly they're the same because they're both based on the British common law at one point. So, I mean, they
Mhm.
do parse that. So, um, but just to step back a second, you gave the example with me previously of, I take a gun out, I shoot or try to shoot Kaz. You take out a pistol and you defend Kaz by shooting me, right? Well, that's self-defense.
I wouldn't
But,
defend him, by the way, just for the record.
yeah,
I let you kill
yeah, there you
Cass.
go. but that's at that time. Like
Hypothetically, we're in
No, but
hypothetical situation here, but okay.
yeah. But that's at that time, right? So you're acting at the time that I'm doing something. If you're trying to use that analogy to say, well, that's the same as what the state does for a convicted felon of that crime, well, then why wouldn't, when the police investigate and they figured out that I shot Kaz, why wouldn't the police just shoot me then? Why would you bother with the judge and jury? Because that's if you're going to use that analogy, because it's time separated, it's a delay.
Right.
But
Right.
then it would, but wouldn't it be the same thing? They'd say, oh, well, you shot him. We figured out that you shot him, so we'll just shoot you now.
Well, it's called due process. So in the case with Kaz, in the case with Kaz, I'm immediately trying to prevent his life from being stopped.
I agree.
Right. I'm immediately trying to save his life. Now,
right.
When we take a step back, I mean, that is a good point to raise. That is a good thing to consider. But what the state is trying to do, and I think if done correctly, it can lead to a deterrent of future murders, is what the idea is behind it.
Well,
right. So it's like thinking a little bit more long term. Good.
I would like to, I'd like to address that, but I'd like to address that. But first, I want to just say with kind of back to Kaz's point is with Aaron Hernandez or something. Court cases, and especially serious crime cases, can get very complex quickly. Like you say, if someone's has a brain injury, how much does that affect what happened with their decision making? So it's not a we had a famous case here in Canada where a guy on a bus like viciously attacked a passenger in the bus, brutally murdered him, and the guy was found he was found criminally not competent to stand trial. He was brutally schizophrenic and he thought there was a demon on the bus, and it was like, and people were, understandably not understandably, a lot of people were outraged that he never got. But how do you punish someone that's not responsible for their actions? So that's one thing. But the other thing to look at with this is that if the state makes a mistake, like a system, anything with a group of people running something is going to make errors. NASA makes errors. Airline companies make errors. Anytime you organize a bunch of people on some system, they're going to make an error. If you make an error, like we had a couple guys, famous cases in Canada where, one guy spent 20 years in prison for murder, and then they found out he didn't do it. One of the witnesses lied. The DNA evidence from that time period was inconclusive, blah, blah, blah. If you make a mistake, if the state makes a mistake and imprisons someone, you can't give that person their time back, but they compensated him. He got his freedom, But if you execute someone, how do you fix that? Once you've done it, once you've put somebody to death for a crime, if you come back 10 years later and somebody says, oh, well, the witness lied or the DNA proves this, oh, well.
I mean,
there's no fixing that. There's no coming back and erasing that error, right?
All right. So let me be clear about something. I'm not pro death penalty. Okay.
No, I understand.
And the reason why is because of the fact that I'm a Christian. And I believe that Isaiah Perez should get the death penalty probably like 10 times a day. So because of the fact that I have received mercy from God in my worldview, I have to be very, very easy when I'm pointing the finger, like, oh, you should die. You should deserve this harsh punishment. So, but I have to say this: if I were an atheist, I wouldn't have that frame of reference, And so I would only be thinking about what is best for the state and for innocent people. So if I were an atheist, being consistent with my ideas of like utilitarianism, doing the greatest good, I would definitely be pro death penalty, but very, very different. And we will get to this later on. Very different from the way that it's currently imagined. And yeah, let's move on with these questions. And you guys feel free to raise any of your own questions along the way. But I do have a second question here. Start off with Kat first. All right. If death penalty is proven to reduce crimes and murders, would you support it?
If the death penalty was proven to reduce crime and murders, would I support it? That's
hard
tough.
one, right?
I don't know. I meant to think of these questions during the day, and then because I thought this was going to be a 10 p.m. show.
I know. Blame Sid. Yeah. Blame Sid. I'm blaming Sid.
If you could demonstrate beyond the shadow of a reasonable doubt that it was proven to reduce crime and murder, yeah, I'd be hard pressed to say it's totally unreasonable. And I guess to some extent you do have at least a preponderance to believe that is the case. It's not that that the death penalty itself is what I'm against. It's like I said, it's really all about protecting the innocent life for me. Mm-hmm. I do think that there are cases where a person forfeits their right to live. Yeah, I just do.
Like, let's just say, for example, we caught Osama bin Laden. It seems like that would be the only just penalty for someone who's openly bragging and trying to kill thousands of people, you know? Someone like Saddam Hussein, then, you catch him or Muammar Gaddafi.
But then it goes back to, like, as a Christian, like, you have the turn the other cheek doctrine. You have the no man is worthy to stand as judge against another person because God is the only judge. These kind of ideas in Christianity make it like it seem very difficult to even support any kind of death penalty from a Christian perspective, right? And I guess that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, that's why I can't. But the thing is that I believe that if it was done correctly, I definitely believe that it could and it should be deterring crime in general, but definitely murder. And I'll just give you an example. Like in California, you know, Charles Manson died on death row after like 40 years or something like that. So it's like you have a better chance of dying on death row in California from natural age or just cancer than you do from actually getting executed by the state. So if it were done in a swift manner, and the other part is that it's like, if I take a step back and say, look, if we are gonna do this, having endless appeals for decades on end, it's kind of not really necessary. Like once that was this person, see, you have video footage of him killing all these people, it should seem that maybe we have like a year, maybe two of like appeals or whatever, and then because otherwise you're wasting a lot of resources along the way. And that's kind of the other part why I would be in favor of it, because there's a lot of resources you have to give to that person as well. But Sid, what do you think?
No, go ahead, Cass.
I was just going to say that the reason why I brought that up is because similar to that ethic in Christianity where no man can stand judge against another is my thinking, it's sympathetic to that, is that even if we could say in a hypothetical philosophical vacuum that somebody could forfeit their right to life, we don't have the ability to necessarily adjudicate that because we don't have the perfect set of information. We can't control all the variables and factors that can demonstrate to ourselves adequately that we have justified ourselves in taking that life in turn. There may be something that we should have done a priori to fix that, you know. There's tons of things you can think of, right? So that's why my point. I'm similar to the Christian.
I agree with that
way.
I actually agree with that. Sid?
Well, I'll take this as a hypothetical that if you're saying if it would reduce, because whatever, like when I researched in the U.S., the states with the death penalty have a higher rate of murder incidences than the states without it. So I'll take it as an if. I'll say if we had capital punishment for a serious crime like murder, and if it acted as a deterrent, would I still have my position that I'd be opposed to it? I guess my answer to that would be yes, because you could definitely, if you changed the legal system and said, you know what, we spend a lot of time and resources and a lot of things based on the principle of the justice system being that you're innocent till proven guilty, right? Because in that system, and this is not just for murder, it's all crime, we're going to let a few bad guys go to protect people that are charged with a crime that aren't guilty of it, because we've set up our system in a way that the state has to prove the person's guilt. The person doesn't have to prove their innocence. If we flip that and said, well, you know what, if we made it so that the court system is that you're guilty till you prove yourself innocent, we could deter crime, because we could cut the crime rate huge amount, because people would now really have to, Jesus, if I even get charged, chances are I'm going to jail.
Right.
So we could deter crime by switching the justice system around and saying, well, now you're guilty till proven innocent. But is that ethical?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's functional. Right. It could be functional, but is it ethical? I would argue that it's not ethical.
And Sid, what I was telling you too about the way that it's carried out, it's joke. Once you get on death penalty, you have all of these resources, and they have to, I mean, it literally costs probably millions of dollars to actually execute someone in America, for example, because of all these court fees and just everything. And they have a lot of rights, along the way. So I can tell you this from living in Asia, that not everyone around the world, and I'm not saying this is right. I'm not saying this is right, because I honestly believe in like Norway's example of taking care of prisoners. I believe in rehabilitation, but a lot of these places overseas, man, yeah, it's not. You guys ever seen like Banged Up Abroad or Locked Up Abroad? They're not Hiltons here. They don't put you in Hilton. So I think if you're on the death penalty and you're forced to live in very meager circumstances, maybe just getting like 3 sandwiches a day, something like that, something very light. Seems like you get on death row and you have everything taken care of for you, you have, as they say, cod, three hot. Oh, good.
There's another axis of consideration that we're not discussing at the moment yet that I'd like to bring up, that as even if we can demonstrate that it reduces crime, even if we can demonstrate that there's all these benefits to it, right? We don't have an example, and I think that it's incumbent upon us ethically to try to get an example of a truly restorative, rehabilitative justice system that isn't so based on retribution and vengeance. Because I think that we're stuck in this paradigm of retribution and vengeance, regardless of our own personal ethical considerations. So we need to actually get that kind of data before we can say, oh, this is actually better. This is the best way to do things.
Well, are you familiar with Norway's and like Denmark's justice system, Kaz?
I'm very loosely familiar with anything about their justice system. So, I'm even more loosely associated with any kind of statistics about it.
Well, first of all, their recidivism rate is like 3 times less than the United States. Let's just say that. But yeah. So if you commit a crime, 3 times less likely to commit a crime again in the future under their system. But they basically put you in like a condo. You basically just have a condo. I mean, nothing even relatively close to a prison cell. Like you can come and go as you want. The guards barely can enter into your room. I mean, it's very, very favored to the life of the criminal. But they have like sports leagues. They have like arts and crafts. They have music. They have bands and stuff. I mean, you know what I mean? They do like gardening and stuff to like help rehabilitate them, give them animals, and it really works. Sid, are you familiar with that system in Norway?
I'm sort of in the same boat as Kaz. I've seen some TV shows talking about the Norway. They they build these communities out in the middle of nowhere, and and I mean, my take on that is that the old word penitentiary came from the root word penitence. Like they were originally built for punishment. You did something really bad, you went to this place and you were to suffer because of what you did. So we've gotten away from that model. I mean, I'm kind of land in the middle of this. I mean, I don't want to. If you make a system that turns human beings into animals, why would you be surprised when they come out at the other end and get free? They're going to act terrible. I mean, you don't want people to be in a situation where that's just an atrocious living experience, and then when they get out in 10 years, they're just going to go crazy. Like that's no good. My concern more is more that, and to go to Kaz's point, like, I don't want to punish people. I want to protect society. If someone's because most laws, if you think about it, for the exception of things like real estate, like functional laws where people don't really know where the lines are, boundaries, we've artificially decided something. So it's just like contract law. You and I have a business set up. Well, there's all these laws about how we organize the business. It's not that we're unethical or immoral. We just need to have set rules so we know that we can do X, we can't do Y. But the moral laws aren't really for most people. If there was no law against murder legally, most people still wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? Like there's lots of societies, like hunting gathering societies, that have no formal written laws, and they might do it to other groups, but they don't run around killing each other en masse, because most human beings don't need a written law that says don't go kill X or don't do Y. So when you formalize those moral codes into laws, they're not for the majority of the people, they're for a small minority. And that's why I think that people that will commit those crimes, I don't think that's an effective deterrent, because like I say, people that are going to murder for whatever reason are still going to do it, regardless. Either A, they think they can get away with it, or B, they don't care.
Or they don't care. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That is an interesting.
My concern with prison systems, whatever you're going to do with them, is I want to protect the public. I'm not interested in punishing somebody.
Right.
I am interested in them being able to rejoin society if it's a minor crime. If it's some wingnut like Jeffrey Dahmer, I'm not interested in him coming out of prison. Like, but I don't need him treated like an animal in there to punish him.
Right. And Sid, I at one point Canadians were like really docile, especially after meeting you. You're a really nice gentleman, but I thought you guys were like all nice and stuff. But you guys had some pretty prolific serial killers. I've seen a lot of documentaries coming out from Canada, man. You guys almost rival us as far as you guys had some pretty serious killers there, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, we got everybody's got their wing nuts. I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
It's just,
whether I've seen quite a few come out. You can't top you can't top the United States, but I've seen a lot of them come out of there. But anyway, getting on to question number 3, and please, if you guys have a question, please raise it. But if families were able to grieve easier knowing that their loved ones' murders were no longer a threat to the world, do you think that would be in a pro? Do you think that would persuade you? And Kaz mentioned at one point that he says, well, if they're locked up, they can't kill people. Well, I'm like, that's not true, because one, they can escape. People have escaped.
Did I say that?
A famous example is, or infamous example is Ted Bundy. He escaped and killed more people. And then also they kill people inside of the cell, inside of their famous, I mean, you mentioned Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer got killed by another killer. So,
well, if I said
that's not always true.
I don't remember saying that. But what I was going to bring up before also to that point is that what are we trying to do in any case when we're trying to address a crime, right? We're trying to prevent it from happening again, right? To the best of our ability. We're trying. So if we're designing a system, all we should be caring about is the punishment, or the remedy, we should say, right, that we prescribe, is that the most likely to prevent it from happening again. Now, of course, if you kill somebody, then they can never do anything ever again. So I guess I'm thinking on the fly here about this. I'm not trying to control where my brain goes here. So I guess if you could say that it would stop a person from killing, but then again, to Sid's point, it doesn't deter the wider population, because if we're trying to prevent future murders, then we would be more concerned about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We would be concerned about how we affect incentive. So, like he said before, and I was thinking when he said that, a person who is in the throes of an emotional breakdown or snap, where everything is just gone out the window, there is no consideration for consequences. There is just the emotion, and then there's the feeling, the need to act, the fight or flight response activated in full. So, I mean, I don't think that there's any punishment that we could ever enact that would ever truly deter the worst crimes.
Yeah, that's true. But Sid, and I know this is it's an emotional thing. Like, okay, any chance you guys have ever seen the movie The Village by M. Night Shyamalan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I think
Sid?
I think I've seen it. Yes.
Spoiler alert.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Spoiler alert, but spoiler alert. Cover your ears for the next minutes. But these people these victims of violent crimes, they wind up building like society, like apart from world at large.
Yeah.
And that's really, really good. Really good. But point being is that the point is that for them being in society, that it was triggering for them to be in a society that produced the people who were capable of killing their loved ones. So this is the way that they decided to cope with it, and this probably retribution justice probably wouldn't help everybody, but I'm sure there's a lot of people out there just would say, I could go to sleep tonight knowing that the person who killed my daughter isn't gonna kill someone else's daughter. So it might be something that as a society recognizing that people endure this, it might just be something that's going to help them in the grieving process. So what do you think?
I would say that in this current paradigm, you're probably right. But I think that if we ignore that constraint, we might consider the possibility that you might be more well served and more likely to sleep well at night, knowing that your loved ones aren't being murdered, because we live in a society where people are getting the care, the health care they need, the attention that they deserve to not become killers in the first place. And I think that if we found a way to shift away from the retribution and vengeance type of justice, then that's what we would see. That's my hypothesis.
Man, Kaz, you should be a preacher, bro. You'd make a good preacher.
Thanks. I guess. I don't know.
Sid, what are your thoughts on that? That's a good point.
Well, I think there's two ways to look at this. There's the personal, and then there's the societal. So on a personal level, absolutely, I can understand somebody that would, if somebody hurt my family member or killed them, yeah, I'd be like, I'll pull the switch. I'll, let me at them. I'll take care of this, no problem, right? I can totally understand it. That's a natural human reaction to that kind of situation. I mean, I've never been in that kind of situation, obviously. But I mean, I've been a victim of crime, but nothing like that. I've had somebody break into my car and I've been mad enough, So I could totally understand on a personal level, if I had a family member that was killed, I'd want the worst possible things done to the person that did that to them. But if you, and that's an emotional reaction to that. Now, would I feel better if the state killed somebody that had done something to my family members? Probably. Is that a good way to heal? I don't have a faith background that would let me say, well, turn the other cheek. My family member's up in heaven. God will forgive all this. It's going to work itself out in the hereafter. I mean, I don't have that to go back on. All I got is the here. So, but I don't know psychologically or ethically if that would actually make me heal better if that person was killed versus if they were imprisoned. But on a societal level, okay,
right.
I just wanted to put the second part.
No, please. I'm sorry to interrupt.
On the societal level, again, ethic for society, is it worth some individuals feeling healed to pull the rest of us downward a little bit to this punishment and vengeance end of the scale? I would argue it doesn't. And again, like we were talking, I don't know after the discussion we had before, but there's a reason why we don't have public executions anymore, because we kind of know it's a nasty bit of business, and it doesn't really
right.
It's a pleasant thing to do to put somebody to death.
And we have Netflix now, just so you know. That used to be like the public entertainment back then, just honestly speaking. So yeah, if they would have Netflix, probably they wouldn't have been down for it several years ago. But so I do want to say one thing. When we get to the last question about how I think the most humane way to have the death penalty would be. But I do think that's a good point that Jay said about bringing everyone down. And I think ultimately, though, I generally believe that if you are going to have the death penalty for the sake of like retribution, justice, like that can't be the driving force behind it. What has to be the driving force is deterrence for the future. And I will talk a little bit more about that in the end. But anyone else want to bring another point or question?
No, I'm good.
Or she's going to the next question.
If you got covered everything you wanted, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right. Then, so in your opinion, like and we'll talk about you, okay, not someone else. In your opinion, what do you think would be the worst fate, the death penalty or life in prison?
Well, I'll just go first then, I guess. Definitely life in prison would be worse for me than death. I would definitely take a death penalty if given the choice.
Even in a Norway system, I'd probably rather live in a Norway system than my own personal life right here, man. Those guys live significantly better than I. But no, it's a joke. But
I just
under any circumstance where you lost Sid Vicious.
Well, I'm assuming by your question, the hypothesis is that we're guilty.
Right.
I'm assuming that's what you meant. Like if you're if you've been put in prison and you're guilty.
Oh, right.
If I'm innocent, I definitely want to stay life in prison because then it gives me a chance to prove my innocence. So I'll take your question as that.
Right.
That's put in prison. Okay, so that's how I'll answer your question then.
Okay. That's interesting. That's touche. Okay. Probably should have specified that.
I just wanted to put that out there just to make sure people understood how I'm answering this question. Because if I'm guilty, then that's going to be a different answer than I'm innocent. So if I'm guilty and my choice is the death penalty or life imprisonment, I don't know. That's a tough one. Because you can get used to living a certain way.
Right.
I guess it depends how much guilt I felt on what I did. If I had killed somebody, even if I was guilty of murder, I guess it would depend on why I murdered somebody. Because you could murder somebody which is not a legal reason, but you could have a moral reason for doing it that you could live with yourself. But if I had done something
like if they abused your,
or even if I don't know. somebody cheated you.
So they came on your.
Well, they did.
Somebody came on your property
They
and
frauded all your retirement savings, and you snapped, and well, yeah, that's really not the right thing to do.
Oh, like Bernie Madoff. Okay.
Well, or
Right.
yeah, something like that, and you blew him up in his car or something because you snapped, and so yeah, maybe I could live with myself enough just to spend some time in prison, but but no, if I did something like a heinous crime, like
right,
hurt a kid, or I would kind of want to go, but I'd probably do it myself. I'd pull a Epstein or whatever, but but no, but if I was innocent, for sure, I'd want to be.
Hey, don't mention that guy's name, man. I'll get his demonetized.
You're already demonetized.
We start talking about Epstein, man. I'll get his demonetized and maybe some.
I was just about to say. I was just thinking.
Maybe we'll get some agents on my talking about what happened with that guy, man. Because that guy, yeah. Let's not go there.
Anyway, that's my answer.
But so, a couple of ways to answer this. As a Christian. There was this crazy story where I'm getting chills just thinking about this, but these two missionaries, I think they either sold themselves as prisoners so that they could go into a prison system and actually serve, and they gave their lives to do this, to do the work of God. And so for me, it's like flat out, I would have to say, as a Christian, I would want to live as long as possible so that I could be a witness to God. And then also, I found that my character and my reliance on God has been longest when I've undergone the worst punishments, the worst sickness, the worst. It's like the stronger the trials and tribulations I've endured. It's made me more reliant on God, and it's made it's humbled me, and it's built my character. So I have that to rely on. But I will say that people who are advocates against they'll always say that life is actually a worse sentence for the people, to deprive them of their freedom. But if that were the case, then the people on death row, when they got the death penalty, they wouldn't be fighting it tooth and nail, And so that should really be an indicator that life would be an easier. It's easier for most, and I guess that has a lot to do with what kind of circumstances you're in. Because if you were in a Philippine prison, trust me, you would say, you'd line up right now, I'll take the bullet, because they have such dire circumstances, and they're in Thailand. You ever see how first the guys are sleep shoulder to shoulder? Any chance you guys have ever seen that?
I'm not sure what you mean,
Sid. No, I've seen shows on prisons in third world countries. It's never, even a prison in a first world country is not nice unless you're in Norway. So I can only imagine what. Yeah.
Right. What? Any chance you ever saw Prison Break, Kaz?
The show, I briefly watched some episode of it, but I did not get into it.
So in Prison Break, in part 2, they actually have to go. Right. Lincoln, no, not Lincoln Park. Not Lincoln. Is it Lincoln Brewster? Maybe Lincoln Brewster. I can't remember his name. But anyway, they go and I'm sure it's a Hollywood version of the prison. But yeah, man, you go to some of those places like in Africa, yeah, you pretty much would want to be dead. I mean, the sanitation is nothing. Some of these places, they don't even feed you. The way, your family has to bring you food to eat, and if you don't have family, you got to get that somehow. You got to work for it somehow. If you catch my drift, you know what I'm saying. So you're gonna have to get that, to be clear, food somehow. So
just to be clear, are we all in agreement that the death penalty is wrong as it stands today?
Oh, well, I don't know. I'm opposed to it, but yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm just taking a screenshot of that.
That's a hard question. Like as a Christian, I would answer totally different from like legally or ethically.
But what is your final position?
If I take, it's going to be pro death penalty.
You're pro.
As a Christian, I can't support it because I 100% deserve the death penalty myself. So I can't be throwing the book at people and saying, you guys, deserve this X, Y, and Z, because I deserve it as well as a Christian. So I have to be against it.
Okay, so we're all against it. Cool.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question out of that?
And actually, please.
No, just what you said, it kind of caught my. So if you think you deserve it, why wouldn't you think somebody else deserved it? The death penalty.
Wait, say that.
Well, you just said as a Christian, you said you deserve the death penalty every day. So if you think you deserve it, why wouldn't you think other people deserve it?
Why wouldn't I think?
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
I mean, according to our theology, everybody who walks around has grace to us all. The fact that we're breathing and the molecules in our body stating all grace, and we're all given grace, and mercy daily. So,
that
I'm no better than a trans or a bi or alcoholic or.
So that grace applies to you then too.
Sure.
Okay, so we're talking about. You don't think you deserve the death penalty. You think you're a. I'm not trying to put thoughts in your heads or paraphrase what you're saying, but you're saying that I'm sinful, but then I've got this grace that covers that sin. So you really don't think you deserve the death penalty. You just think that I'm not a good person and God's covered me by Jesus. To shorten it up, like I'm not trying to get into a theological debate with you. I just want to say that really you don't think you deserve the death penalty, and that's why you really don't think other people deserve it.
The thing is, if I remove that parameter off, then I would 100% be for death penalty, because actually, whether or not it deters crime or not, I think if you, and actually we'll get right into the last question here, which is what would be the parameters in which you would want to see the death penalty occur, even if you did support it. So let's just assume that is going to be the law. How do you think that should be undertaken? And I will say this, that like if someone like, let's just say someone like, if you got your hands on a Hitler or Kim Jong-un, if you got your hands on one of that guy and like you didn't kill them, to me, that would be a bigger, that would be morally derelict. That would be a dereliction to not do that. Just in the same way as I would say it would be moral dereliction not to nuke Japan, because the amount of damage you're going to do by not killing.
So you're freezing up from my end. I don't know, but can I interject on that, please?
Go ahead, Cass.
It would be an act of omission.
Yeah, sorry. But I mean, isn't that what God does all the time, according to the theology? He's allowing human beings to act on their own free will, even though he has the ability to stop it, even though he has the ability to prevent all this suffering and horror and all this other stuff. Like, doesn't that seem like exactly what God does every day? And he, having even more power, would have even more responsibility to alleviate that kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't see how you have any responsibility for anything that you do to that somebody else does just because you showed them mercy. And that's why I'm saying, you're confusing me. What is your ideas here, man?
I mean, Kaz, can't you understand? I'm completely. I'm giving my views this way, and I can tell you what I would believe if I wasn't, if I was an atheist, like if I didn't believe in God. Okay, so it's not. I don't find that
So what is it that
contradictory.
you actually believe right now?
Because okay,
Is it okay to kill somebody who is a killer or not?
is it okay to kill someone who's a killer? This is a little bit rough because
But before you tell me why it's rough, I just want a yes or
again,
a no.
as a Christian, obviously, like right now, are you talking like in America?
No, period.
Like,
Absolute the right thing to do. Is it a right thing or a wrong thing? If I know this guy killed somebody and I say I'm gonna pop his head off, am I okay or am I a bad guy?
probably wrong, but a bigger. It's a little. I'll give you an example. What you were talking about, Kaz, as far as that the victims of families should be able to live in peace, knowing that they're living in a society that's not raising criminals, like a more equitable society. That would be more in favor of is trying to build a society like that. So here's an example. Here's an example what I mean, because we had foster kids growing up, and they had like caseworkers, caseworkers who came in and checked in on them, and I believe that everybody should actually have that from the state, because just because a child is being raised inside of with their biological parents, there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of abuse and psychological, physical, sexual abuse that's taking place that should be, people become killers for a reason, and so we should be getting behind the root causes of all that stuff. I would rather spend my time there personally.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. My answer is no. There is no actual well-reasoned justification to kill somebody, even if you know they're a killer. There's always another avenue to take. So that's my clear-cut position. There you go. Oh, he's frozen, I think.
Yeah.
Dawn Hub, hi, death penalty. Yes or no? That's a hard one that oh man, Willie.
I mean, I guess
You're glitching a little bit.
Yeah, go back to the last one.
Mike glitching. Mike glitching.
Yeah. Go Dawn Hub's comment. Death penalty, yes or no? That's a
Yeah.
hard one that I can't commit to. Okay.
Well, remember what I told you? Yeah, and remember I told you, I remember I told you, Kaz, the whole reason why we started talking about the death penalty. I said on this issue you could pick, and depending on what day it is, you catch it. It might be a different response. You remember what I told you about that specifically? Why I'm not like dogmatic about issues. You remember that?
I feel like that you should take that as
because
evidence
it's
that
complicated.
You need to adopt a new ideology because you're not getting enough answers from the one you have.
Oh, well, the only thing I would add to that, I might jump in.
I need to what?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Isaiah, I cut you off.
No, please.
No,
Please.
I was just going to say, to be fair,
Please.
Put my point in there. I think, Kaz, that might be a little unfair to because your scenario or your question's a little open-ended in the sense that, if I was standing somewhere and somebody had just shot somebody or just killed somebody or was attempting to kill somebody, yeah, I would feel totally fine killing them. Some guy's beating up somebody with a lead pipe and I come up and start, pull out a gun and shoot them to defend that person on the ground. I'm not, I don't think that's what you asked that question in that, but I'm just saying that you can't just say, or would you ever be justified murdering somebody that murdered somebody? I guess it depends what you mean by murder. I mean, in that situation.
No, I see your point.
Yeah, in that situation, I'd feel totally justified. But to space it out in time, and that goes back to what I asked Isaiah earlier in the conversation when he said, oh, if you shoot a murderer or somebody's trying to shoot somebody and you shoot them, well, that's not murder. But if you wait a week, so if you space it in time and say, well, now this is a retribution, this is no longer stopping something, this is me getting revenge, then yeah, I just wanted to clear that up because, and the other thing too, a little bit is that, I mean, I don't think I think everybody should do a little soul searching on questions, and if you have firm answers to things, that's fine. And if you don't have firm answers to things, I don't think that's a problem either. I mean, that just means you need to think a little more on it, and maybe there's different scenarios. And like you say, if you ask different questions, like if it's a personal thing, would I kill somebody? Maybe. On a state level, I just don't grant the state that much power. That's my backbone on this. It's an ethical thing where I think that the state should not have that power to kill us. They can do all kinds of things to us. I just don't think they should kill us.
If I could, I just wanted to clarify a little bit about my earlier statements. So I agree that if you are in a position where lethal force is warranted to prevent the further taking of anybody else's life, go right ahead. I don't think that you have to preserve the life of the killer in order to stop further killing. But I do think that if there's any chance that you can not take their life in the prevention of other death, then you should try to do that if it's possible and reasonable, practical, all that other stuff. So, but the ethic that I think is really the core of all of this is just that our goal is to prevent innocent lives from being taken. And if there's the question of whether or not the ideology can give you that answer or not, I think is important when we're examining our ideologies and seeing how much power it really has. Because if we are left with a bunch of open questions at the end of the day, even if we think that those answers that it gives us are incorrect or they need to be second guessed, or just as a rule by default, that's our job is to be critical and skeptical of our answers. But if it doesn't have an answer in the first place that's clear, then I think that that's an indication that our ideology is subpar.
So, okay, so actually that's a really good point, but I want to say something, Kaz, because, yeah, okay, so first of all, this is a dicey issue, right? And the fact that it causes pain to reflect on this, because we're talking about people's lives here. We're talking about people's lives, and especially if you guys are atheists, you believe, well, as soon as you're dead, this is going to be the end of everything. So I could understand why you two would be more reluctant than I am, whereas I believe in an afterlife, right? But you were talking about the goal is trying to save people in the future, right, Kaz? And I believe in doing so, like, the death penalty in and of itself is not like the end all be all. The end all be all is to create societies that are where people don't have to steal, people don't have to rob, people have access to mental health care, and where counseling is like readily available and encouraged, and not looked down upon. Mental illness is dealt with, and because you guys talk a little bit about mental, and there's just so much stigma about that. And so dealing with those, being open, honest, and caring for people when they have, issues or do crime, I think that's where society would be better off than just killing people. But I do want to get to the last question, and I have a very funny story for this last question. But suppose you were going to be the person responsible for the administration of the death penalty. What would be the parameters you would like to see it carried out on? Sid?
Well, yeah. So if I was in charge, and let's say I lived in a place where they determined they're going to have it, I would rub it in people's faces. I would make them public. You're not hiding this behind prison walls. You're not sanitizing this process at all. Get the kids, bring the school kids up. This is how we deal with No, I'm serious. This is how we deal with murderers. If your society is deemed that this is a necessary function of the society and this is part of it, you have public. I would make them public. Yeah, public executions.
And how exactly, like under?
What do you mean? Like, well, how would I do it? I don't know.
Firing squad, hanging.
You'd be wanted to do it humanely. I don't know, like firing squad or something humane. But no, I would definitely make it. That would be my core principle. Is like if we've agreed that this is an ethical thing to do and this is a deterrent, then it's got to be public to make it a deterrent. People have to see the criminal suffering on the way to get executed. So yeah, that's what I would.
I agree.
I wouldn't be popular, but that's what I would do.
I agree. I mean, if we're going to accept as an axiom, just a priori, if that's going to be our presupposition, if that's going to be our presupposition that it's a good thing to kill in order to deter killing, then why not kill in the most salacious way possible? I don't understand why not. That seems to follow logically from that. If we accept that, now I don't accept that. I think we've all agreed that we don't accept that. So
what would be the actual administration of it?
I mean, you seen Death Race, or was that movie show? Is it Death Race? Yeah, with all the cars and the prisoners and everybody's just killing and driving and let's do it.
Oh, Death Race.
Why not? Give me
I
one reason.
I had a buddy that used to joke about that. He'd say that what he would do is have like gladiator fights with convicted killers and use the money for pay-per-view and use the money for charities. And then the winner just got a pardon.
I don't know about that. I think that's too far.
God. The Running Man, because that's actually the premise of Death Race, is that they're raising money, and it's corporately sponsored, this death race for prisoners. But I think that was also the premise of Running Man as well, where I believe they were prisoners. It might have just been a reality show. I can't remember, so long ago. But yeah, they're fighting to the death. But I do want to hit you with something. Have either of you guys ever heard of the book Tuesdays with Morrie?
No. Can't say I have.
Sorry.
Okay, so it's Mitch Albom. He also wrote another book, 5 People You Meet in Heaven. No?
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Anyway, this guy has like a living funeral because he knows he's going to die in like a few months. And they talk in there about nobody ever gets to, like when you're dead, you don't get to hear the people, what they're saying about you. So he has like a living funeral where all of his friends and all of his family come and they celebrate him. And my idea is that if you were going to get the penalty, would be something like that, to have basically like you, like for me, it wouldn't be a matter of wanting to punish the person or wanting to hurt them. It's a matter of trying to relieve whatever pain that they're in. Because Sid, you talked a bit about living with guilt or whatever, living with that on their conscience. And it would seem like what I would, if I was going to do it, and again, I wouldn't want to do this, but if I would, it would be in a very painless way. But you would have your family there with you. You would get to tell a story about how your childhood, how you got on a life of crime. And, you have your family there and with you, and even the victims' families, and be in a position where we're not trying to destroy you or crush you. Like, that's not the point. Is we're trying to set you free of whatever pain you're in, and however you were failed in this lifetime. And in a very like lethal injection, something that would cause no pain whatsoever. Something that would leave you very euphoric. But what do you guys thought of that? And I have a really funny story to tell you on that. Funny side story. Sid, you got any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know if that'd be an individual thing. I don't know if I'd want everybody talking about me right before I get smoked. So I don't know if that's inhumane torture or not. It depends on the person, I guess. I don't know. I mean, people are going to react differently based on what's going to happen to them on their own demise anyway. But yeah, I don't know. Don't really have an opinion on that. Like I say, my only thing with that, like I said before, was that if you're going to have them, make them public, and then however you do it, whatever you're going to do, get at it. But yeah.
And see, for me, I think if you're going to do it public, you would have to make it painful because, you know, it have to be determined. But for me, it wouldn't be about trying to cause pain or suffering like that for me. But what are your thoughts on that, Kaz?
Yeah, like I said, I think that if you are going to do this publicly, then that entails doing it painfully. Just because why not maximize the impact of deterrence if you're going to try to deter it in this way? Why no half stepping, right? But I'm not sure what I think about the living funeral idea. I don't think that's gonna. I mean, they've already committed the crime. It's a little late to try to fix things if you're still on the retribution side. But if you want to do that for, like, you know, maybe some kind of recidivism reduction type of program where people who haven't committed murder in this current paradigm, you want to try to get them to not commit further worse crimes, and that might help. Yeah, that sounds good.
Scared straight. You ever heard of scared straight?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, obviously we have that already, and it's not doing that much of an impact, is it? I don't know.
Right. You guys know who Steven Seagal is? I don't know. You do, Kaz, but do you guys? Is he up there?
Well, he's not up there, but
look at Sid's face.
I don't know. I've seen his movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've seen the direct to video movies, or the ones whenever he was still in the movie theaters?
I was watching him back in the movie theaters. I haven't seen anything lately. Kind of turned into a train wreck. So, no. Yeah,
he has. He's a Russian citizen. Kaz, what do you think about him?
Nobody watches those movies. I don't know anybody who has. Like, not since '94.
I'm gonna tell you a quick story about him, and then I'll let you get any last thoughts you want to say. But he was making a movie called Glimmerman, and there's a scene in which he has to kill a serial killer, right? But halfway through the movie, he has like this spiritual awakening, and he says, "You know what? I don't want to be killing anybody on screen anymore because I don't want to contribute to like violence, right?" And then so what winds up happening is it totally throws the script way off, right? Like they're scrambling, they're trying to rewrite stuff. And so the guy who he's supposed to kill, he says, "Hey," he says, "think of it this way." He goes, "Think about this guy. He's stuck in like this karma cycle, and he's stuck here as a murderer. And basically by killing him, you're allowing him to be reincarnated to have an opportunity at a fresh start." And so whenever he heard that, he's like, okay, he wound up killing the guy, but then he wound up saying later on when he's making the movie that he didn't actually kill him. So they had to go back and rewrite some other scripts, and that was pretty story because he's like notorious for doing some really crazy stuff on sets. But anyway, any last thoughts, Sid?
Yeah, on this topic, I think I don't know. I think we basically covered it. The only thing I might want to add to that is maybe for another discussion, we could talk about Canada just recently passed. They were going to amend it this year, and they've waited, but they passed 2 years ago a law called MAID, Medical Assistance in Dying.
Oh, right.
So they wanted to set up a system where if you had like a terminal illness, like cancer or Alzheimer's or something, you could set it up with your family doctors, and they could help you end your life. The government wanted to expand it to include people that were suffering from mental health issues, and they were supposed to put that legislation forward this month, and they postponed it because there's been a lot of pushback. that would be an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not totally related to capital punishment, but it's in that vein. But no, as far as the capital punishment goes, and I think that, I mean, not that popularity is a good basis to judge an idea, but I think there's a reason why the U.S. kind of sits alone with China and Saudi Arabia, and that most places don't have capital punishment anymore, and there's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it works. Like all the stuff I looked at, it doesn't deter anything. So, not that was my primary reason, but my primary reason was I don't want the state that much control. I just don't trust the state that much. They screw everything else up. Why would they not screw that up? You know. But anyway, that's my final thought.
Cass?
No, I just wanted to say that the way I envision us moving past this is a very complicated and convoluted type of a path where we have to have something like universal, comprehensive health and mental care. We have to alleviate all the factors of poverty. And, you know, I think that if we're at the point where we are justifying taking innocent lives as some kind of greater good, when we're taking by attempting to take the guilty ones, where we're saying it's justified to take the innocent ones as well. If we're at that point of motivated reasoning, then I think that it's incumbent upon us to do every single thing we possibly can to alleviate any factor that is outside of that. And I think until we've taken that step, I don't see how we can even begin to justify allowing innocent people to die on death row just for some half-ass calculation we've done.
That's Sid, I would love to have a another talk on MAID, the physician assistant.
Yeah,
because whenever I was in high school,
Go ahead. Sorry.
When I was in high school, just delay here.
Yeah.
But whenever I was, Don hates atheists, and he actually agrees with you, Kaz. So you've made a friend today.
Awesome, that's great. Thank you, Don.
But he's from the UK, part of the Commonwealth. But okay, so yeah, they asked us what I thought about euthanasia, and I thought, well, euthanasia, they're probably the same as the youth in in America and the youth in Africa. No, I literally thought that back in the day. That's not even a joke. No, it's just seriously. But Sid, I would love to unpack that with you, because I actually would love to have that conversation with you, because I'm a rare Christian who actually supports that, because I'm all about ending suffering. And kind of like online what Caswell was saying is that I do believe there's better ways to do that. Could be working for better solutions than the death penalty. But it's kind of like if someone were in that position, that's why I was talking about the living funeral, because even if we had to do that, for me, it wouldn't be a matter of trying to hurt the person, but a matter of trying to end their suffering. So with that being said, I really want to thank you guys for that talk. That was very interesting. You guys gave me some interesting things to think about. And I really appreciate the pushback and, just taking different directions that I wouldn't have thought about by myself. So I want to thank you for joining us today, and check us out at our website. Here's our website. Put this up here, www.rhepodcast.com. Facebook, on Spotify. Yeah, check us out there, and give us a like and a comment in the video. Let us know what else you'd like to see us discuss, because this kind of just came up last minute in a talk that Kaz and I were having. But we definitely would like to see people giving us some topics to discuss. I want to thank you again, and leave you with this outro. And here we go. Guys, stick around for a minute.